we just got this news not too long ago. This is a big deal. Ex-Trump lawyer Sidney Powell has now pled guilty in elections crime trial.
Woo.
So for those of you who don't remember, Sidney Powell was one of the leading voices with the whole like rigged election stuff and the, stop the steal, all that stuff. And she was honestly a tremendous crank who elbowed her way into the room, and she had the most cockamamie theories of all of them. She's the person who said, like, Hugo Chavez stole the election for Biden. It was Venezuela who did it.
She's the one that when some of the Dominion lawsuit against Fox Discovery came out, all the producers were like privately talking about how completely insane she is.
That's right.
And she was also the one who, she kept saying they were going to release the Kraken, some like bombshell evidence of massive election fraud that, of course, never happened. She was also implicated and now has pled guilty to her affiliation with, there was like an actual election fraud in terms of them breaching election systems in Coffee County, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of, what she was indicted for and has now taken a plea deal and pled guilty to.
So let me give you the specifics because they're really interesting. So Sidney Powell pled guilty in the Georgia election interference case brought forth by Fulton County DA Fani Willis. Powell appeared in a Georgia courtroom where she pled guilty to 6 misdemeanor counts, including racketeering, on Thursday. This is just one day before her trial was set to begin. So they were trying to cut a deal at the last minute. They cut a deal at the last minute. She avoided felonies. It's 6 misdemeanors. But, and here's the really big point, Powell receives no jail time. CNN's Marshall Cohen reported that she will have to testify at future trials in the case and write a letter of apology to the people of Georgia. In addition to those conditions, she was sentenced to 6 years probation, a $6,000 fine, and $2,700 in restitution. So the fact that she has to testify is a big deal because that means she's slipping on somebody.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, look, we're going to let you off a little easy. You'll get 6 misdemeanors, et cetera, no jail time. But what do you have for us? And the answer is, I'm going to start chirping. And who's she going to point her guns at? Who knows? But if it's the big guy, he's in even more trouble. I mean, he's already in a tremendous amount of trouble. I think the New York case, the civil trial for fraud, was like a harbinger of things to come.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, your lawyers were incredibly incompetent in that because you can't get a good lawyer anymore because you stiff them, you don't pay him, and you don't listen to him.
Right.
So he's got a bad lawyer in that situation, failed miserably, continues to fail. Now the question is just, we know you're going to lose your business licenses in New York. The question is, how much are you going to pay in a fine? It could be up to $250 million. So he already lost that case. It's just a matter of like basically figuring out what the punishment is going to be in New York. And I feel like that's going to happen in a lot of these other cases, which are criminal cases. The same dynamic is unfolding. Like, he didn't take care of a lot of these people who were co-conspirators.
Yeah.
In fact, he made a point of saying, like, I'm not paying for that one's attorney fees. And so what do you think is going to happen? Of course they're going to turn on you, you idiot. And he stabs people in the back all the time. He did it as president all the time, threw people under the bus like nothing. And now the chickens are coming home to roost.
I think people are still operating on an outdated analytical framework when it comes to Trump and the level of issues that he faces now. And this really did hit home for me with the New York civil fraud case, where it was like, oh no, he's already lost. They're only debating now how big the financial penalty is going to be. And so for really, in a certain sense, the first time in his business career, and certainly since he's been a national political figure, he's actually facing some consequences. Like, the walls are for real actually closing in, which has always been the meme before. Like, how's he going to wriggle out of this one? And then he easily does. Well, this time he's not wriggling out. And you not only have Sidney Powell taking a deal, pleading guilty, agreeing to, testify in these trials. There's also a lot of speculation about that dude, Kenneth Cheesebro, who is the pro-Trump attorney.
Cheesebro,
who was at the center of a lot of the, I know his name is ridiculous, whatever, my name is also ridiculous, so we won't judge him for that.
This is way more ridiculous. Get out of here.
Anyway, he was really at the heart of crafting some of these fake elector schemes and concocting these supposed legal theories. His trial is slated to begin on Friday, so a lot of people are looking at him like, wonder if he is going to plead too. Because you can't imagine, maybe you can, but the pressure that these folks are under right now, the massive amount of legal bills that they're facing, potentially time in prison that they're facing, And originally, with a lot of the co-conspirators, Trump was like footing the legal bills. But then there were just so many of them. And it was it was a lot of money that he basically was like, all right, I'm not going to do this anymore. So these people are all out there exposed under tremendous pressure, trying to avoid jail time. Guess what a lot of them are going to end up doing? A lot of them are going to end up following the Sidney Powell path.
And I need to remind everybody, this is just one of the cases. This is not the same as the Jack Smith case.
Right.
You know, and they're similar. It's like adjacent issues. But from my layman's eye, I understood the arguments in the Jack Smith case better. And I thought that was stronger. But according to most legal experts, they actually say the opposite. They think that the RICO case is stronger. So what Fani Willis is doing is stronger. So, and the fact that there's already movement in her case leads me to believe, like, the same damn thing is going to happen. The biggest slam dunk of all of them, and I think you agree with this, is the classified documents and the obstruction of justice charges. Because that's like, it's over. We already know. Like, it's a guarantee. We got the people. We got the evidence. It's a wrap. You know, but the fact that now you have one of these, it looks like she's going to be talking, and this is in Georgia. I think in D.C. you might see similar things happening. He's in real trouble.
These are also state charges, which he can't, even if he gets elected president, can't just, pardon himself from. So even though the documents case, I think, is the most clear-cut slam dunk, although, you have a different jury pool down in Florida, maybe you'll get some people who are very friendly to him or like basically cult members in favor of him. But that on a legal basis, it's just they have basically no defense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think Trump has decided that he's going to lean into the political defense, and that's what he's really going to, going to count on, because he has very few actual legitimate legal defenses against many of these charges. But, in court of law, it doesn't matter what you're saying publicly. It doesn't matter how you are able to spin the politics of it. What we're seeing in that New York civil fraud trial is that, when it comes down to it, the facts actually matter. There are laws. There is a chance at being held accountable. And so, as there's a lot of concern, and this is something we can talk to Cenk about too, like a lot of very understandable concern about Joe Biden and his prospects and his age, and he's not polling well, and he's losing to Trump in a bunch of swing states. I just saw a poll that came out. You always point this out, Kyle, like there's next to no acknowledgement of this landscape that Trump is facing, and not like in the distant future, but right now, immediately in front of us.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. And one of the things that I found interesting is when Trump's in the courtroom and he's chosen to go to a bunch of these court proceedings, he'll be there and he'll just kind of be sitting there scowling.
Yeah.
And there's even one instance the other day where he was loudly talking to his lawyer, like angrily going back and forth with his lawyer, to the point where the judge was like, pipe down.
Wow.
And he had to pipe down. Right. But then what happens is he sits there kind of meekly during the court proceedings, then he goes out afterwards, standing outside the courtroom, all the media cameras on him. All of a sudden, he turns it on, and he starts doing his whole, like, witch hunt, unfair, terrible prosecutor, bad prosecutor, and he does this whole spiel. And the thing that's so fascinating about that dichotomy is he feels like all I have is the political counter-argument, because I'm losing the legal case inside the courtroom.
Exactly.
All I have is outside. I'm gonna just lash out and try to swing at everything in sight. And I think that stems from, honestly, a sense of desperation and panic. And this is coming from the guy, you guys remember, the longtime viewers, this is coming from the guy who was pumping everybody's brakes during some of the impeachment cases against Trump, during the Russiagate nonsense against Trump.
Yeah.
I was the one who was like, this doesn't look like there's much there. And it ended with a whimper. This is not that. It's just not.
Yeah, and that's why I say I feel like, it's almost like people have forgotten about all of this unfolding.
I know, and it's 91 criminal charges. You can't forget about that.
Right, you can't forget it. And it's also, this is a former president. He's almost certainly going to be the Republican nominee. It's extraordinarily consequential. When we did our focus groups for Breaking Points with Republican voters, most of whom really like Trump, even with them, when they were asked, like, okay, but what if he is facing jail time? They're like, I can't do that.
Because it's just a practical question at that point.
Right.
One of them literally said, I remember the focus group, one of them literally said, I don't know how you can run the country from a jail cell.
Right.
And it's like, that's going to be what everybody thinks. This has been reflected in polling numbers, too. His support drops tremendously when you say, well, what if he gets found guilty of a felony and he's in prison?
Right. Well, and then, the fact that you've got RFK Jr. running as an independent, I think also really comes into play because
True.
now you've got an outlet for people who are,
Don't like
hate Joe
Biden.
Biden.
Right.
But can't stomach the idea of Trump, especially if he's facing jail time. And so they've got a bailout option in place. He's got a significant war chest, RFK Jr. does. So there is a decent opportunity that he'll be able to get on ballots, at least in a number of key swing states. So, I was actually thinking about that. We had a little debate on Breaking Points about RFK and with you and Emily and Sagar and like who he takes more from and what's going to happen, et cetera. And afterwards, I was actually thinking about the two focus groups we did, the Democratic one and the Republican one. And even though the Republicans who like Trump, like they like him way more than the Democrats, they all liked Biden, but they were kind of like, they were like, I'm worried and he's kind of old and he comes across as a little soft or a little frail or whatever. But Trump was such an animating force for them that there was actually more loyalty and uniformity towards Biden among the Democrats, not because they were in love with him.
Because they hate Trump.
But because they hate Trump,
Yes.
Then there was uniformity and loyalty among the Republicans. And so I do think that RFK Jr. in the scenario where Trump is, in trials and facing jail time or being sentenced or whatever, the fact that he's there as a bailout option could end up being significant.
Yeah, and hurt Trump and help Biden effectively. Yeah.